using tappets which actually give movement to the valve train. As most assembly steps, everything is lubricated. The camshaft is now fit into the crankcase. O-rings are fit into the bolt depression so that the crankcase have seal when brought together. The front main bearing can be a 4-piece or 2-piece. Our engine uses a 2-piece front main bearing. It must line up with the dowel post in the crankcase. Position it while the case is open. By the use of pencil, mark the spots of bearing where it must meet the dowels. It will allow you to more easily position later. The crankshaft seal is now placed around the crankshaft and will be coated with adhesive when the crankcase halves are brought around it. The crank gear is now positioned on the top of the crankshaft. There's an airworthiness directive out on this part. The process includes tapping down and placing a bolt with a lock tab. This is then torque. There's an inspection in this area with a feeler gauge. The objective here is to get the gear down in the counterbore and square with it. If it's not flush and flat, you could have a lot of trouble down the line and in the air. Now we assemble the connecting rods with the correct bearings. It is important to correctly matching the bearings to minus tolerances rather than being replaced. The connecting rods and the crankcase are always same number. You need to keep corresponding numbers together. 1:1, 2:2. Mounting the crankshaft vertically for purposes of visualizing the final assembly. The connecting rods are assembled on the crankshaft with the numbers away from the crankshaft. We now lubricate the bearing areas and truss surfaces. We now face the crankshaft and oriented to so the lower or number 1 piston is extended to what would be called top dead center or full firing position. Next is assemble with the IO 360 bolts are not torqued. They're stretched tightened until they reach a specific length. We now have reached the point where we have two sub-assemblies which were about to be joined. We suggest to have a friend to inspect your work, every part. Being satisfied that all is correct at this point, we're ready to join these sub-assemblies. Lubricating the bearing point and truss surfaces. The front main bearing is lubricated and placed at the front main crankshaft journal. Since we marked the bearing with the pencil, we can line up the dowel holes correctly. Placing adhesive on this nose seal and on the receiving part of the crankcase. This is a contact cement recommended by the manufacturer. Will adhere when the halves brought together and then it gets lubricated. We now position the crankcase half over the extended number 2 cylinder. The bearing is adjusted to fit correctly over the dowel markings.